Good afternoon, Mark Sutt with HurricaneTrack.com here with your Hurricane and Hurricane HD video blog for the last day of July 2012. Glad you could join me for this particular look at the tropics. Things starting to get a little bit busier. You can tell just by looking at the satellite picture a general increase in convection here. Tropical wave, another one here, 99L, and then another feature here that has some pretty good rotation in the mid-levels. Very typical of the end of July heading into August. We would expect to see an increase in activity. Also, weak low pressure is going to form off the Carolina coast and head up past Long Island and New England this way, but probably not going to be tropical in nature, though it will have pretty strong winds over the ocean, a non-tropical frontal related development. Looking at this particular tropical wave, this is a very large envelope of energy, bringing quite a bit of squally weather to the Lesser Antilles, parts of the Virgin Islands, Puerto Rico, and the eastern side of Hispaniola. This tropical wave will continue to move on off to the west-northwest and spread that squally weather through the greater Antilles. And again, like I mentioned, a weak low-pressure area will develop off of the coast of the Carolinas, and it's going to move off to the northeast. And it'll be pretty potent for its size and the fact that it developed off of a front here, but non-tropical in nature. But if you have boating interests off of the Outer Banks, you need to keep that in mind. Looking at upper level winds for the system out here, 99L, which is right here. This is the upper level winds, the wind shear. Let me outline what's what, because it is kind of hard to tell where the land masses are, etc. Here is the east coast of the United States, North America. There's Florida, come around here, there's the Yucatan, and finally the northern part of South America. And the way out here is invest area 99L. Alright, so the upper level winds out here, fairly light. Anticyclone aloft right there, sitting over the top of the system, so we have 5 to 10 knots of upper level winds, and that extends all the way over to the Caribbean. So wind shear, where it is now and generally where it's heading in this direction, wind shear not a factor, not a problem for this system. Farther to the west, though, we have this tropical upper tropospheric trough carved out. Fancy name for unfavorable conditions, cyclonic flow, converging air, sinking air, not favorable air, you name it. Strong upper level winds persist in this region, and that dips down into the Caribbean Sea. Unless this feature here lifts out, once this tropical wave moves through the southeastern Caribbean, or Caribbean, whichever you prefer, it could encounter some pretty hostile conditions, and therefore I don't think it's going to develop much more than a weak to moderate tropical storm. We'll see. The potential is there for more strengthening than that, but I don't see the evidence of such right now. But you folks in the Lesser Antilles, especially the Windward Islands, need to be ready just in case. Certainly the tropical wave itself is going to move through, and that'll bring squally weather for a period of time. The morning model runs from the Hurricane Center, they're simple hurricane models. I want to look at the ship's output. That stands for Statistical Hurricane Intensity Prediction, and it's one of their intensity models, one of several, and it initializes it at a respectable 20 knots, only getting up to about 60, 61 knots here by days 4 and 5. Yesterday, it was peaking out at around 73, maybe 75 knots. The current pressure analyzed is 1,010 millibars right now. So you see that in 36 hours, the ship's model does indicate it reaching 37 knots, which would be strong enough for tropical storm intensity. I want to show you what it looks like on the GFS. This is important. I wrote a Facebook blog about this just a little while ago. This is the 5,000 foot level of the atmosphere, 850 millibars. Remember that the atmosphere is like an onion. It has layers. Here is one tropical wave here, and you can see definitely a little wave of low pressure there. This is the one bringing the inclement weather to portions of the Caribbean islands here. And then here is our tropical wave and weak surface low, indicated by a rounded area of vorticity or spin in the atmosphere, which represents energy, but it's called vorticity. Now what I want to see is how well defined this is at 5,000 feet, and how well organized does it stay, and then does it ever reach up higher into the atmosphere to the 500 millibar level, which is about 18 to 20,000 feet. So the higher up the vorticity extends, the deeper the system is in the atmosphere, and the model will analyze it like that, and you see a stronger system when you see that. So this is the current analysis. This is valid tomorrow morning at 8 a.m., so this would be Wednesday morning, 8 o'clock Eastern Time. And you see pretty good vorticity with our system here, probably organizing and trying to become close to tropical depression strength at this point. Notice too, pretty strong high pressure to the north, as outlined right there. This is not going to be able to turn out to sea. Just no way. Not with this strong area of high pressure. This area of air here is thicker, so this cannot move into that. We'll talk about that later. I'm getting ahead of myself. When we get a hurricane out there, we can look at steering patterns closer. So then we go to 48 hours out, and we see pretty solid vorticity energy associated with the system, and looks pretty good at the 5,000 foot level, maybe nearing tropical depression strength at this point. Finally then at 72 hours, as it just begins to approach the Windward Islands, still has pretty good vorticity associated with it. It's rounded in nature. It's not kind of oval shaped like this feature up here, or more of a stretched out caterpillar look like this. This represents vorticity and spin in the atmosphere, but it's more linear, whereas this is round, which indicates more of a low pressure area that is symmetrical, meaning that it's more organized, and that's what I'm looking to see. Now it's not very deep. You don't have a lot of vorticity rings in here. I'm trying to simplify this for you. If you look at the scale on the side, you only have just low to moderate spin with this. It's not the strongest of systems. Now if we look and go at this point to the 500 millibar level, up to 18 to 20,000 feet, it's practically non-existent. The model doesn't see much of it at all, meaning that it is not very deep in the atmosphere. Going to 96 hours, this is where it starts to increase, at least in the model here. Pretty tight vorticity there, fairly small system, high pressure to the north, going to keep it moving generally west to west-northwest. And here, when we look at the 500 millibar chart, yes, it starts to show up just a little bit. Enough vorticity or energy reaching higher into the atmosphere that the model's sensing that it starts to develop around this area a little bit more. Finally, at 120 hours, the 5,000 foot level, still fairly well organized, not impressive, not at any stretch of the imagination. And when we do get a hurricane out there, I'll show you what impressive looks like. But it does reach up to the 500 millibar level just enough that it starts to show up with some of those yellows there, showing me that it is sufficiently deep in the atmosphere. It's tall enough, thick enough in the atmosphere that this very well could be a tropical storm moving through the southern Windward Islands in about the next 4 to 5 days. Notice up here this 594 height line. This is simply a mountain of air, Bermuda high pressure to the north, not going to allow this system to turn and head out to sea. So if it were a hurricane, it would probably just continue to go on through and probably go through the Yucatan and into Mexico as strong high pressure over the eastern United States steers it westward. But it's not going to be a hurricane, I don't think. I don't see much evidence of such. But you folks in the Windward Islands, be ready for tropical storm conditions possible in the day 4 and 5 time frame. So there you have it. The rest of the tropics behaving themselves, and the East Pacific as well. Alright, so there you go. That's the last update for July. Tomorrow, August 1st, we will begin the traditional ramping up of the hurricane season, climatologically speaking anyway. And we'll have a lot to talk about, I think, in August and September. Again, I am Mark Sudduth, my website, hurricanetrack.com. Thanks for watching this hopefully informative and educational video blog, and I'll have another one for you tomorrow.